Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Super License F1 podcast. I'm the guy that's going to bloody do it, and my name is Rodney.
I am a turning, seeming, bouncing ball on the last day of an Ashes test, Zachary Priest.
Yeah, all the cricket references while we're winning. I guarantee once we start losing, they'll be all erased from history. Erase the tapes. We'll just have to delete the podcast forever if we start losing. But for now, Aussie, Aussie, Aussie.
Oi, oi, oi. Actually, that we were talking about mic checks before we were recording. That wouldn't be a bad one either. Aussie, Aussie, Aussie. Oi, 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 oi.
I was thinking that might be like a funny, like a secret track on an album or a podcast or something. Just sound checks. Just a recording of the sound checks. I mean, there must be someone whose thing is listening to sound checks and listening to them, repeat it, and then tweak all the knobs, and then hear it again and hear how it's better or worse. You know what I mean? That's someone's thing.
I once was recording a different podcast and took all of the ums out and ran them into a single track. So it's just which was really
a good
one. Do you think we'll ever see like bloopers from the Drive to Survive Netflix documentary series in future? They had a little bit of bits and pieces.
I thought you were going to say the one that we did, the special that we did. Bloopers from the Drive to Survive series. I don't know. You'd need some characters in the sport first. I mean, the problem is Daniel Ricciardo is not having such a good year. So, I mean, he tends to, when things are not going well, he tends to either be completely humorless or completely 180 and will not take a single thing seriously. So, could go either way.
Yeah, it's the Ricciardo oscillation. Which one are we going to get?
Sure is. Well, a bit like that. That's a bit like what our show is. With an F1 show, we're going to talk about the Hungarian Grand Prix. We've got a race recap coming up. I believe that you've got a super quiz as per usual.
Yeah.
And then we're going to have a look at the Fantasy League. But you want to know what race you're talking about, which means I need to get into this thing that I've written. Okay, that's right. We're landlocked in the Eastern Bloc, and you can't talk about Hungary without mentioning Budapest. It's literally two cities, Zach. Buda and Pest. I didn't even know cities work like that. Is Ding Dong in Texas still one place? Is Two Egg Florida actually two separate eggs? I need someone to tell me. At 4.38 kilometers long and 16 turns, the Hungaroring has more twists and bumps than a 1960s dance floor. It was almost a street circuit, Zach, before someone decided, nah, we kind of like living and working in all these buildings. Let's build the track somewhere else. But it's a popular race with the Finns and the Dutch, and we all need to support the race if we want to keep it on the calendar. So please, buy your tickets, lay your money down, and play your part. Deep down, everybody's got a Hungary heart. So let's all have a Coke and kiss a bloke. It's time to hustle and flow to Hungary, baby.
Ooh, hustle and flow. Nice finish. Well done. I like that one.
So you did
it's
that.
Pronounced, it's Buddha and it's a Pesh. I'll have you know, Pesh.
Well, that's the most fascinating thing about that fact. Not the fact that it's two friggin' different cities. So, and they just refer to it as one as if that's perfectly normal.
Bifurcated, I think, is the word.
It's like calling it Melbourne Frankston. Doesn't make any sense.
No, Melbourne. Well, I mean, who would want to include Frankston in Melbourne? Way harsh.
They would.
Laying it down.
They would.
Way harsh. Yeah, they would.
Not.
They would.
Don't listen to them. It's not. It's different.
Yeah, exactly. I reckon, because I'm really excited to hear what you have to do next, the 30-second recap.
Oh.
So should we just get into the race?
If we have to.
Let us race a bit. I gave him space.
Suck my balls, man.
Let's hurry up and get out of here. We got a race to do.
The 30-second recap, Zach, it's a little bit like a sound check for the rest of the episode, don't you reckon?
I mean, I suppose, having done some sound checks in my life, are you saying that this part of the podcast is like when you're at the nightclub at 5 p.m., the sun's still streaming in, you've never seen the nightclub look like this. The fact that you've never been here during daylight hours, and you can see you can actually see the stickiness of the floor. Like, I suppose movie theaters would be similar. Is that the kind of what the podcast feels like to you right now? Just a bit like it's all in front of us.
I just mean that it's more like, the race recap is meant to be sort of a short, quick little soundbite, and, it sets the tone and it sets the level for the rest of the episode, sort of. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
I do. I like
Speaking
that.
of setting levels, apologies if you can hear a crying baby in the background. I assure you everything is. Okay. Well, Zach, as you were referring to, I'm supposed to do a 30-second recap of the race. I suppose I should do that. All right. Let me boot up the accompanying soundtrack so that I know when to start and finish. Here we go. Oh boy, Max Verstappen on pole, fantastic. What a great race for Setfall. He had it in the bag, except Lewis Hamilton and the Mercedes strategists had a different theory in mind, and the late pit stop put him on some fresh tyres. He was concerned he was going to lose. Verstappen was concerned he was going to lose. Only one man can win. But at the end of the day, it was Lewis Hamilton who won, and passed him easily at the end of the day, the battle that counted. Really, this is a race of question marks over Bottas, over Albon, over Gasly especially. What are they going to do? Who are they going to keep? Who are they going to get rid of? I covered one of the race incidents there.
That was maybe our best recap, I think.
Yeah.
That had everything in it. I think we could almost call the show there. I mean, we've had some boring races and we've had some really good ones. And this one, it was a really good chase.
This is important. I mean, do you think that this was a good race or not? Discuss.
Oh, I would prefer this race to genuinely boring ones.
Mm-hmm.
Because what we got this time was a real fight at the front, but it was it felt like the only thing that was happening. And a lot of it was it's annoying when you're having to watch the timing screens to see how far, like you're doing the maths. The maths is building tension. It's like, this long, will those tires last? The unknowns, it's kind of building up to the cliffhanger of the episode. Whereas we actually, like when the pass happened, it was like, okay, there he goes. Like, okay, there wasn't a huge amount of battling there, which was a little bit annoying. But it was better than not having that at all, which was, which could have easily been the case. Which is what you mentioned in the recap, right? That the fact that Verstappen started on pole meant we were always going to get something interesting, because if he could get out in the clean air, and we know the Mercedes aren't great at following, and Lewis Hamilton had problems cooling his brakes this week, that it might just be that track's position could be enough. But we don't quite know how good that Red Bull is. It's been showing up, I mean, especially from one half of the garage, the Max Verstappen half has been showing really consistent pace and racing ability. So yeah, it was always going to be something on the cards. We were just happy. I think I was just happy that everybody kind of made it through turn one. That could have been the worst thing that maybe would have happened, is if Verstappen and Hamilton run into each other. But it was tantalizing at the beginning and tantalizing at the end. What was your read?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I was just watching the race highlights before we started recording, and it really hammered home how, apart from the Hamilton-Verstappen ending and the tension that built, the rest of the race was pretty vanilla and pretty good, but also not stellar. And people seem to want to lump this in with Germany and the two races before to say, man, we're on four amazing races on the trot. And I just think this race was good, but not amazing. So need to get that in there because, hey, it's my podcast. I've been working on this for a long time, and that's my opinion, and no one's going to hold me down. I think, though, that watching the highlights before, like I said, there was an actual battle between Hamilton and Verstappen when they were both on the hard tyres around lap 38, 39, and it was actually really good. And it went for a couple of laps, and they were dealing with back markers, lots of deep braking, lots of wide lines and switching back, and that, I think, was actually more entertaining than Hamilton's ultimate overtake of Verstappen when he was on much better rubber. And there was only, sure, he had to get the move done. It's always risky, and, people weren't really sure what was going to happen. Maybe Verstappen were just going to run out of tyres and slide right into Hamilton, who knows? But ultimately, the move was like one lap of following, got the move done pretty easily. At the end of the straight, I was ahead of him, and it's like, well, I always like to see a battle for the lead. That's always exciting for me. But it just doesn't. I need more than that to sustain a fantastic, brilliant race. That's all.
Yeah. What did you think of the different strategy calls between Mercedes and Red Bull? So Mercedes, seemingly caught everybody out and was like, we're just gonna pit Hamilton. We're just gonna get him in because he's not catching him. He doesn't seem to be able to overtake Max. Let's just get Hamilton in and change this race. Because there's an opportunity for us to overtake later in the race, and it will force a move, which is it's so unlike Mercedes, because usually they're in the front waiting for everybody else to do stuff, and then they can react with track position. And it seemed unlike Hamilton, and he wasn't sure about it either. He was like, "Are we sure this is the right thing to do? I don't think this is right." And in his post-race, Mike, while he was still in the car doing his victory lap, he was saying, you guys were so right. I'm sorry I doubted you, and they were like, "No, it's fine. We're meant to have these discussions," which shows a really healthy team, I think, because we hear a lot from Lewis Hamilton saying, why am I on these tyres? This is wrong, or you should have pitted me earlier or later. But I think that's just how they discuss things, and I don't think that should be minimized at how successful he is. He does communicate more and more these days. He used to be a little bit more like Kimi, and I'll tell you when I need information, but shut the hell up. Whereas now he's managing his racing with the team, which shows a real maturity and shows how hard he's going to be to beat. And then the opportunity was for Red Bull to pit immediately after, when Hamilton came in. They could have pitted the lap later and just kept things on even pegging. But Hamilton put in such a good lap that it immediately looked like they would have come out Verstappen would have come out neck and neck with Hamilton or a little bit behind. So as soon as that window was closed, that was it. But it just kept getting worse and worse and worse every lap that they left it. So do you think Red Bull should have played differently?
I think it would have been interesting to see what would have happened if they had reacted immediately and pitted Verstappen within a lap or even 2 laps, just so that even if he fell behind Hamilton, they were on the same kind of tyres and he would have had an opportunity to just be right there pressuring Hamilton to see what he could have done. He might have been able to pull back for a couple of laps and then have a charge. I do sort of feel, and I've come to the opinion, that Mercedes really kind of snookered Red Bull with their pit stop because it was going to take them a lap at least to react. And they really did seem to catch them napping. And that lap was always pretty much going to put Verstappen behind Hamilton. And apparently Mercedes said that they took 7 laps to discuss whether or not they should pull that move. And I think that it was very clear that they had to weigh up a lot of different things. Clearly, it'd be a bit harsh to say, well, Mercedes spent 7 laps talking about whether or not they should do it. Red Bull had probably 30 seconds to make a decision and respond if they were going to pull it off. And, that's a tough call to make. And one thing is that traditional wisdom is you don't pit when you're in the lead. You just sort of consolidate. I think that in some ways, Verstappen being out in front with Hamilton 20 or 25 seconds behind would have put him in a good position. For example, if there was a safety car, he would have been able to pull in, pit, get back out pretty much with then the same tyres as Hamilton, fresher tyres, the same compound. So he would have been looking pretty comfortable then. It is a tough track to pass on here as well. So they might have been thinking, hey, even if Hamilton does catch us, he's still going to pass us. But I don't think it was a clanger of a decision. I don't think they had a lot of good options left after Mercedes pulled that trick on them. That's my reading.
I don't think Red Bull are going to be caught out like this again. They obviously weren't even thinking that it was a possibility. Well, otherwise, they might have been planning for it. If Mercedes had seen the opportunity 7 laps earlier to go, okay, let's start talking about it. That's quite a long time for it. Maybe should have been apparent to Red Bull that was something that could happen. And I wonder how much teams are looking at what other teams are going to do, other than just what seems like the tyre strategy. It's okay, well, he's gone to a tyre that could take him to the end of the race. We don't expect to change.
The other talking point about this, it's a way of talking about the leaders without talking about them, is the fact that they were pretty much 1 minute ahead of the next Ferrari. So Vettel in 3rd and then Leclerc in 4th, basically a minute between them and the next Ferrari. And I think part of that, at least, is that normally, if you're 20 or 30 seconds ahead in the race, you kind of just control the pace. No need to take unnecessary risks and push. If you've got that extra speed in the car, usually you just keep it in your pocket. It's very clear that they weren't doing any of that, and they were both pushing each other really hard. I mean, that's a positive outcome for this race, I would say, that they finished a minute in front of the Ferraris, but that was the true pace of the cars, not just them managing the pace. So we got to see them at their best, you could say. But I mean, I think that it's disappointing to see Bottas locking up his tyres, getting a bit of front wing damage off Leclerc, and even bumping a little bit with Hamilton on the first couple of corners, and kind of ruined his race because by the time he pitted for a new front wing, all the cars had gone past him. And then again, at this track, tough to overtake. You're in amongst all the back markers. You've got a lot of work to do, and he was pretty much out of contention, and Gasly out of contention because Gasly.
Because Gasly. It was
so there's no rear gunners, no wingmen,
Yeah, even looking at hoping that maybe someone like Daniel Ricciardo and some of the other guys a little bit further down the field. Daniel Ricciardo started from the back because they took the opportunity after a poor qualifying performance to
pop an engine
put some
in
new parts on the car. Just to swap everything out. And he finished in 14th and kind of got stuck behind Magnussen and just couldn't make it work to get past him. And Hülkenberg had a similar race where he kind of just things didn't really go his way. But it did kind of feel like, unlike the previous few races we've just had, that the midfield was kind of bunched, but there wasn't any pace advantage between anybody. We saw some really good racing between Kvyat and Albon. where they went about 4 corners, just like literally next to each other. And that is, yeah, and it's also the best part of the track. You know, after that straight, you get those winding corners, and both drivers have an opportunity. Like whether you go inside or outside, they bend back on each other enough at the corners so that you can tussle for position. And everybody was pretty respectful, I would say, this weekend, which was really good through that period, because neither driver feels like they're out of it. So if someone gets past you, or if you hold on to the lead, the other guy's going to be like, well, if you keep giving me room, I can still get round, and then I'm going to have the apex on the next corner, and then you're going to have it on the one after that. So it makes for great racing. And that sequence of corners should be the blueprint for like any sequence for new tracks, especially with the size, like the width and length of the cars nowadays. This feels like it's just a really nice weight to the track that works really well. It undulates in the right way. But I think both of those drivers made a case again this weekend for a run in the Red Bull. Even though they've said again, we're not changing anything, they both look really good. So interesting, I would say.
I think
very interesting.
Some peripheral points around that. I think this is sort of everyone's playing a numbers game this week after the race to sort of point out, well, this driver lost that many points, and these teams behind that many, that team's this far behind this other team. One of the points equations is, I think, that Verstappen has twice the number of points as Gasly, and the point differential between Verstappen and Gasly would mean that if Gasly scored something like the same number of points that Verstappen has, they would jump Ferrari in the constructors, even though, obviously Ferrari aren't necessarily kicking goals everywhere, left, right and center. They're doing okay. They've had, a lot of podiums and a lot of, second and thirds. But the other one is, if we looked at just the last couple of races, and granted, Verstappen has won a couple of those, but if you looked at just the last couple of races, now granted we're 12 races in, I think it's the last 4 races, Max Verstappen has outscored Pierre Gasly, and that's just not a good look for any teammate pairing. But in a car that is winning, to be struggling to get into the points consistently, that is just poor.
Yeah, that's always the rough thing, right? That if you can make the car look this good, it may be one of the reasons why Ericsson isn't at Alfa Romeo, because Charles Leclerc made it look kind of easy. It's like, look at I can drag this Sauber up the field and get 7th, and you're languishing down in 14th. This car is better than you're making it look. Kimi Raikkonen's doing very similar work in the Alfa right now as well against Antonio Giovinazzi. Raikkonen's is a wily old fox and has a little bit more experience to pull from. And I expect Giovinazzi to improve. But yeah, we have some unbalanced teams this year, which is a really interesting thing, because it felt like for the last 4 seasons, the middle to lower ranked teams all have kind of similar quality drivers. Whereas now it really feels like the only probably quite balanced team is Renault with Ricciardo and Hülkenberg. I think Ricciardo's a better driver, and I think you would probably agree. Mm-hmm. But they're both experienced. They've both been in Formula One for a while, where you can't necessarily say the same thing for Toro Rosso. You can't say the same thing for McLaren with Sainz and Lando Norris. You definitely can't say the same thing for Williams or for Racing Point, or Alfa Romeo, or even, Haas maybe is the other one. So they're even right at the top with Ferrari and Red Bull. So they're really unbalanced teams. And I think it just shows that really Mercedes, even though Bottas is hit and miss, that car is very good. And he seems pretty reliable right now. So he can just kind of reliably finish in the top 4 and make it work this weekend, notwithstanding. Whereas the rest of the teams, just because one car's doing well and getting any points, there's no guarantee the other car's anywhere near them. So it's hard work.
The other thing about the points with Verstappen in particular is that he's very close to Bottas on points, which it just feels like maybe that just shouldn't be a thing when Bottas is in a Mercedes and Verstappen is in a Red Bull. Although I have to say, Red Bull's had a much better season than most people were thinking, and delivering a lot of firsts for Honda. First in a long time, first pole, his first career pole delivered by Honda. Who would have thought? And then, their first win in whatever many years. So it's, he's definitely getting the most out of it, and Gasly's definitely getting the least out of it. And then I guess the question mark really is, what are you going to do with Valtteri Bottas? Because I was thinking about this today. I think he's done enough to deserve a spot next year in Mercedes alongside Hamilton. He's proved that he's a good wingman. He's proved that he can win races. He's proved that he can take pole even here and there. I guess the question really is with Esteban Ocon sitting on the sidelines, clearly you would say Valtteri Bottas deserves a spot in Formula One, but you could just as easily say that Esteban Ocon deserves a spot in Formula One. So that sort of negates itself. Then you come down to, if you're Toto Wolff, who would you rather have in the car for maybe a year or two before these big new regulations come in, before Lewis Hamilton, sets all these records and I feel like almost every week we're talking about this sort of spectre that Hamilton might just, throw down the shackles and just say, I'm done with Formula One and walk away from driving. But let's just say in a couple of years, maybe he does that. Maybe in 3 more years when he's won 8 championships or whatever, he just says, I'm done. Who would you want to have had 2 or 3 years of experience in that car, Bottas or Ocon? Who's the future of Mercedes Formula One?
Yeah, it's Esteban Ocon, but is it maybe Max? But maybe it's Max Verstappen.
Well, I know that rumor's been circulating around. I think that Toto Wolff has kind of shut that down, at least for next year. But, I think it really spells trouble. I think also if Honda and Red Bull continue to develop, they're kind of in the position now that Mercedes was in when Hamilton joined them in 2013, right? Like winning a few races here and there. They're the challengers. They're the emerging team that has the momentum. And then look what happened to Mercedes for the last 8 years or 6 years. It's been dominant. So I don't know. Verstappen might just think, well, maybe I'll just stick around here for a little bit longer.
Yeah, but I suppose my counter to that is that who do you back out of Honda Red Bull versus Mercedes to produce a race-winning car in 2021 with a new formula? And my money would be on Mercedes, definitely. There is no reason why that machine couldn't create, probably already has a car that could win races in 2021. Honda are only just making their thing work now.
You have to factor in, though, that Hamilton might stick around for another 3 or 4 years, and he's got the team built around him the same way Verstappen's got Red Bull built around him. So there's lots of factors that weigh up, that's all.
Yeah, definitely. One thing we do know is that Bottas is not the future of that team because he's not young either. So if it is going to be Ocon,
that's the downside.
They need to put him in now. But would they just pluck someone from their young driver program who hasn't been driving for a season and put him in the car? I think they'll be conservative like Mercedes usually are, and they'll just keep Bottas ongoing. Now they're just happy with him. I think that they'll just leave him there until another driver emerges, and maybe when Hamilton retires, they can go and grab Verstappen.
I guess the problem is you've got Bottas and Ocon. Let's say next year you want to be sure you're going to have them both in the sport. Where could you put them? Because they can't really go to Force India because they kind of need Lance Stroll and they kind of need Sergio Perez to run the team.
It'll be Williams. Williams.
Yeah.
Because Kubica will be done. And Russell's had his season. He's looked much better this weekend. The past couple of weekends, he's done much better.
Yeah.
He finished 16th this weekend. I think Kubica is not going to be in the car next year. And I think it will be someone like Esteban Ocon.
It could be. There were whispers around George Russell being a potential candidate to take Bottas' seat. I think part of that is just let's just get as many other... This is like a negotiation tactic, and we know Toto Wolff is amazing at business, right? This is like a negotiation tactic. Who else can we get in this car? Who can we say to Bottas, well, we need to pay you less, or you need to agree to these certain terms, all this sort of stuff, right? To say, well, maybe we put Esteban Ocon in. Maybe, George Russell wants to drive for us as well. He'll drive for nothing, so can't pay you, whatever, $10 million a year. Sorry, mate. Part of that sort of the peripheral debris of all this sort of negotiation and potential bluffing makes me think that maybe he's just going to stick with the sure thing and just keep Bottas in the seat. But then it just doesn't seem like a smart move. So I'm all up in the air. I don't really know. Apparently we'll know on the other side of the summer break. Yeah,
I think that's a reasonable outcome. How does this push us into the next period? There's not much else to talk down the grid.
Not a lot.
I just want to ask the kind of question over the next few races. The rest of the European calendar. Who do you think's in the box seat now? Is Max Verstappen feeling good, and Red Bull will just be like, let's just push this momentum, and Mercedes genuinely feel like there's a threat, or is it that Mercedes are like, well, we can fight one Red Bull. It seems like Ferrari aren't really a problem anymore.
If you look at last year, for example, Red Bull was the team that probably developed better than any other team in the second half of the year and really stuck around. All the updates that they brought worked. They were all good, smart updates. And if they show that kind of form again this year, they might be hoping to win, like a third of the races that are remaining, something like that. That would be a good result for them. Obviously, Hamilton, Mercedes, it's all locked up. That's all fine. But, I think they would probably target specific circuits as well. You'd have to look at circuits like, who's going to be good at like Singapore, where it's more reliant on the drivers. You sort of think, well, maybe that's Ferrari's chance to jump in for a win, but then they've just looked nowhere forever. One of the worst
Max
parts
Verstappen
of
will probably win there.
is... Yes, exactly. One of the worst parts of the Ferrari package is what's sitting between the seat and the steering wheel, right? And that's failing them just as much as the team strategies and the actual hardware is. So they just don't even look like threatening. So
they haven't got anything. Ferrari haven't really got anything. It feels like that they can go. This is a lock for this weekend. That they seem like they're fast in a straight line. So they're okay not to be overtaken, but they're not in front to not have that be a problem. So they're not quick enough through the corners. So maybe they'll be great. Maybe they're just targeting Monza. Maybe they're just going to be like, we are going to win in Italy. We've got two great drivers. We're just going to, that's the one we need to win.
You know what'll happen though? Leclerc, and they'll look at the front row. Leclerc will take pole, and then they'll finish third and fifth.
Yeah, exactly. From a bad strategy call, right? From the front. They'll be running 1 and 2, and then they'll be like, you pit now, and then there'll be a 5-second delay in the pits or something, or someone will get past. So that's such a shame. I feel that way. It just doesn't like this. It's classic Ferrari for like the period that we've been doing the podcast. It's just Ferrari just seemingly like they're like a step out of Formula One. They're this other thing where it's like, well, let's just keep doing their own thing, but not really react to anybody else around them. Yeah. And they're still great, but it's almost like they need a really bad period. They need one to be like when it's just Mercedes, Red Bull winning everything, and Ferrari aren't even really finishing in like the top 4 at all. I think that would like start to send shivers up their spines a little bit and maybe get them to change something fundamentally, because it does just kind of seem like they've been spinning their wheels for quite a while now.
The other thing I was going to say is, what does Renault do for the rest of the year? We're sort of approaching the part of the year where you either continue to develop this year's car or you really start focusing on next year's car. You start experimenting with things. You start sort of tweaking wings and bringing new aero packages to the races to see what works and what doesn't in anticipation for next year. The focus really starts to shift from this year's car to next year's car if this year is a write-off. And at this point, you kind of have to say that it is a write-off. They're miles behind McLaren. Ironically, Renault are the worst Renault-powered car team in the field by a long way. So, if you're Renault, I feel like you probably just scrap this year and just say, we're going to just muck around now and start work on 2020 to see if we can improve things.
I agree.
I don't know why. Maybe they could just go up to McLaren and just say, listen, the same engine in these cars. Yours is leaving us for dead. Maybe we just paint yours yellow and you give us one, yeah?
Yeah, I was going to suggest kind of that. Maybe they're obviously not going to give them a bunch of information about their aero, but Renault will get a lot of information about the engine and just the power unit generally, all the PU parts and how they work and how they're functioning. So they're confident in that. Pace doesn't seem to be a massive problem for Sainz and Norris. Like race weekend after race weekend, it seems to be more that Renault's problem is the rest of their car, because really Renault have been really focused on their power unit for the last few years now. So it's developing okay. It's just the rest of the time that they're struggling, the rest of the package. So I would say yes, they should spend the rest of this year focusing on their 2020 package, but they will always be invested in developing the engine. They don't need to necessarily develop the engine for their own car, but they would like to continue to work with that with McLaren. So I think that's probably the route they will take. But they do have stuff to prove to to the French government, their shareholders, their stakeholders, and their sponsors, because there's a lot of money on the table as well for any teams, for getting points, from their, the way that Renault looks at the sport for them. Renault will be like, okay, well, how much more can we invest in the team and in this sport if they're winning? So, does the program look positive for 2020? There's only so much Cyril Abiteboul can do at Renault to say that, yeah, you should keep being in this sport. If they're finishing outside the points, if you're a CEO of Renault, what would you be saying?
In the spirit of Renault stealing other teams' drivers as well, go and pinch back Carlos Sainz and say we were wrong, should have kept this guy, or even better, go get Fernando Alonso out of mothballs.
I could see that happen. I can see Fernando Alonso coming back to the sport next year. Jump in Toro Rosso, mate.
Thinking about it, wanting to. I think, though, for him, it's Mercedes or no one, really. So, I don't know.
Imagine if he went to Red Bull. God.
Oof.
They
would be screwed if Verstappen left, right? That's why I don't think he will, because like those incredibly big hooks that Red Bull have will just be stuck in Verstappen's side so hard, because if they lose him, what have they got? Literally nothing, right? So,
Daniel Kvyat.
He's going nowhere. Daniel Kvyat, yeah.
Not that brandable.
Zach, I think that's some race talk, some general F1 chat. That's a bit refreshing for a bit of a change. But let's have a look at the FIFA Fantasy League with a fantasy update. I noticed that I jumped forward a place in the league, which is nice. Zach, mate, what happened to you this week?
I am just having one of those times where I looked at my team and went, it's going to cost me points to review this. Should I make some changes? And I didn't make any changes through gritted teeth. And my predictions weren't that great either. So, Max Verstappen is causing me problems. So I need to make some... I'm going to, over the mid-season break, I'm going to make some big calls.
That's the time to do it. Noticed on this race that you wanted to be in the top 3. Hawkmoon Racing, Lars Master of Death, a new name, who jumps 5 places into P11 in the league, threatening knocking on the top 10 in the whole league overall. But for this race, second, and then third, Dan Go, which is a good name. But pretty much Hawkmoon Racing's form out there, streaking ahead of the overall league, has stood him well, and this race, no exception. Second in the overall league, Scuderia Benetti. Third in the overall league, Lincoln the Naughty Dog. I did notice, though, very, very close behind Lincoln the Naughty Dog, in 4th place is The Cat Picks Better Than You, which means there's some joke out there about fighting like cats and dogs, but I'll let you guys can work that out.
Cats chasing dogs, that's unnatural.
Yeah, spicing up in the fantasy league, though. Any round where we get closer to each other or I pass you is a good round, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, great. And I'm glad that makes you feel good.
I mean, look, dude, if I have a good round and you don't and I feel bad, I can imagine how bad that's going to make you feel. You're like, come on, man, that's just injury and insult.
Yeah, it's fine. Well, maybe I can make you feel bad with that, with some hard questions on a super quiz.
Shit.
We will accept a couple of questions. Should one only win one? Would one want to have won that one in round 1?
Can you repeat the question?
Definitely set myself up for a fall here, haven't I? Okay. All right, Zach. Man. Put me out of my misery, man. Bring it.
Well, I just looking at my notes here, and I may have given a little taste at the start of the show. Rod, this is the cricket and F1 crossover terms quiz.
Of course it is.
I don't have a fun pun to overlay with this one. So you will just have to get into it. It's going to be quick fire. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 questions that are all terms that cross over both sports. And I'm going to give you some cryptic clues, and you're going to guess the term that that hits both sports. So you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay, so to start us off, this type of bowling was something that Max Verstappen did on his way to victory in the German Grand Prix only a couple of weeks ago.
Very good. This is spin.
It is spin. That's the little one just to get you involved.
This is like Wheel of Fortune, where there's 2 clues, but the middle word overlaps. It's good.
Exactly. Okay, Rod, question the number 2. This protects your genitals, but also cools you into the pits.
I really was skeptical you would get any questions out of this, but I'm glad where it's going. This is box.
Yes, this is box, and I don't know if you've got 3 sets of genitals. I suppose it could be box.
Box.
Yeah, there we go. Question number 3. This is protection for batsmen, but stoppers for drivers.
Protection for batsmen, stoppers. Pads?
Pads! I thought that one was going to be really difficult. Yes. Oh, this is way too easy.
It could have been like, what happens to fast bowlers when Mitchell Stark is bowling? He breaks pads.
All right. To all our American listeners, I hope you watched any of the Cricket World Cup or got involved, but you should just Google these terms and Wikipedia some cricket highlights, especially of this next man, Shane Warne. Shane Warne's most famous delivery, but is also what Maldonado's car's nose became in the 2014 Bahrain Grand Prix.
This is so good. Flipper.
Yes, the flipper, the famous top-spinning delivery that goes straight on from Shane Warne, usually a leg brakeman.
But instead going straight on is what Maldonado did as well. There was a current following.
Just went straight on and became a flipper. Rod, this makes you faster on the straights, but Shane Watson always abused it.
You are like playing to my sensibilities so hard. This is DRS.
This is DRS, the drag reduction system in Formula One, or the decision review system in cricket, where if a decision does not go your way, you ask to review it. And if you are Shane Watson, it is always wrong to review. Last one, Rod. If you play the ball straight past back the bowler, and it's also the trip down to turn one. Straight drive. That's it. Oh. Well done. Woo.
Man. It turns out I'm way better at cricket quizzes than I am at F1 quizzes. Like, way better. Streets better.
Well, I hope that one builds your confidence back up. Did not quite do the damage I was expecting after all the ribbing you'd done post fantasy league.
The other one that you could have had, put this one in your pocket for next time, is a naked person running on the field. Also, Hamilton's championship run.
Also, like a streaker. Streak. Yes. He's on a good streak.
That's a little bonus quiz for
everyone. Well, maybe I will leave that one for next time.
That's a good leave, I would say.
It's a good leave, yeah.
Third man is also a thing that you could put in there. And
Rod, why don't we change segments so we can bail ourselves out of this one?
The drivers, the batsman dress in whiting? No, that doesn't work.
No.
All right. Let's just stop. Okay, Zach, it's time for a final thought. We've talked all about the race. We've talked all about the race, and we've done the quiz, looked at the fantasy league. It's time for us to just get the very last thought, wring it out of our brains, drop it into these mics, and release it on the internet.
So I have had one, which is that I've been finding recently, there doesn't feel to be as much sport crossover, just based off that quiz, actually, of especially in the footballing off season. But generally speaking, sports, I always like it when sports people from like the top of their games meet each other. So like it's Roger Federer is hanging out with, like LeBron James, and it's like, there's two guys who totally know that they're freaking awesome. And like they must talk about how great it is to be at the top of their games, or, I'm sure they talk about other things as well, of course. Have you watched Chernobyl? What did you think of that? That was great. Did you listen to the podcast as well? No, yes, all those kinds of things. But I feel like we haven't seen as many like other sports people at the races this year as maybe we have in the past, or as many, feels like Celeb Watch. Am I missing something? Maybe just big sports Celeb Watch hasn't been as pervasive as it was last season.
Well, British Grand Prix definitely raised the average, but I don't know. In general, you might be right.
Yeah, like Rowan Atkinson was at Hungary.
Yeah, that's
he was the only one I saw.
He gets around it though. He pops up more often than you think.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe everybody's just busy. But usually, there's always like, oh, look, there's 4-time, world skiing champion Lars Hindenslög from Sweden, in the Mercedes pits, or whatever it is. There's Lionel Messi hanging out in the Ferrari pit lane for some reason.
I don't know.
It's missing. Maybe I thought maybe it's got something to do with
it is. I'm just shit at celeb spotting these days, because they'll be like, there's Jessie Wonderguts, and she was in the girl band Flower Explosion, and I'll be like, what?
I love them.
Like, they had 10 top 10 singles in the UK in 2012. I'm like, wasn't really paying attention to
How did you miss that?
You know what I mean? It just wasn't on my radar.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean. So that's my final thought. I need more celebs in my life.
What an interesting final thought. I need more celebs in my life. I guess I need a final thought. I guess really just looking forward to the to the Silverstone
Belgian
Grand Prix.
The Silverstone Grand Prix.
Really looking forward to next year's race.
Spa.
Cannot wait. Really looking forward to Spa. Really looking forward to having a break because, boy, it's been not a slog, but it's been some good going. And I mean, even though we'll probably do a summer break show, try and do a few extra little bits and pieces here and there, it'll be nice to not have to sit up to 1 a.m. on a Sunday night. That would be good. If you want to schedule a work meeting with me, 9:30 on a Monday morning is suddenly back in play, so that's nice. Does it count as a final thought? I feel like I can do better than that. Let me ask you this question,
let me build. I want to build on your final thought.
Okay.
Are you not tempted to tape or download the race and watch it the next day?
Definitely not.
Okay, great. Next question.
Taping sports, I mean, that's something I would do for a sport that I was casually interested in. Like, for example, sometimes people will say, did you see the Formula E race? Oh, it was bonkers. And I might go and watch a replay of that. But Formula One, man. It's the one.
You make time.
Can't do that.
Appointment viewing.
No sleep is worth that. This is Formula One.
That's a good way.
As a final thought, part B, there is a clip going around online of a quiz at the McLaren team between Sainz and Norris. And it's a little bit, I mean, Formula One used to do these clips themselves, like challenge the drivers, ask them all the same questions and see who gets, the most right, that sort of thing. McLaren took it upon themselves to just do their own one as a one-off. And I want to ask you this question, Zach. Who do you think Carlos Sainz's favorite sportsman might be?
I thought it would be like Fernando Alonso because he's said it lots of times. So I'm going to QI style say the obvious thing and everybody raised them as wrong.
The other one might be, for example, his dad brings him up a lot.
Dad.
They did this thing where it was kind of like the dating game style where they ask someone a question that the other person definitely knows and then the other person's supposed to know and they write down the answers at the same time. So Sainz, I think that Norris guessed, Carlos Sainz Sr. And then I think he jokingly said, oh, maybe it's me, Lando Norris. And then Carlos Sainz was like, look what I wrote down. Tiger Woods, Rafael Nadal, and someone else. I was like, I'm giving you so many chances and you just don't get it. But Carlos, they're just not obvious. I mean, they're obvious choices, but they're not obvious to you. I've never heard you talk about Rafael Nadal, so I don't know.
Yeah, Nadal makes sense in the another Spanish sports person who's at the top of their game. I would like to see Rafa in there is, to bring it full circle. That is exactly the kind of sporting celeb that I would expect to be in the McLaren garage at the Circuit of Americas this year.
Sure.
That's if it was going to be anyone, it'd be him.
There you go. Let's make that happen. As a final thought, part C, Zach, it was the 10th anniversary of Felipe Massa's qualifying incident where the big spring hit him in the head and he ended up in hospital and obviously was out of action for a long time, made a full recovery. So we're all very thankful. But it was 10 years, this race, 10 years ago that happened. You might say, Zach, that little spring in the helmet was quite a hat trick.
Yeah.
Yeah? Huh?
Yeah. I could.
Yeah?
Uh-huh.
Do we need to end the show now?
Yes. Yes, we do. Yeah, let's stunts.
It's done. We're fucking cooked. All right. Well, enjoy the summer break. We are going to try and put out something between now and the next race, as we usually do. So stay tuned for that. Don't unsubscribe or anything. And if you
don't unsubscribe, definitely don't do that.
I mean,
why would you do that? There's a whole half of a season left. Why did you bring that up?
Here's what I should have said. Stay subscribed because we're going to be putting out some more stuff. But
don't
also,
even mention the subscription. Just keep it locked.
That's what I'm saying. Keep your eyes on your podcast app for another episode from us before Spa. And then obviously you're all going to come back for Spa regardless. So please do that. But have yourself a summer and enjoy yourself, live your life, and just remember to live every moment. Yeah, because no moment. That's why they call it the present, right? Because it's a gift. That's pretty right. That's pretty right. I think you stole it from me, but that's okay. I stole it from someone else, so that's fine. All right. Well, Zach, no more mucking around. Everyone enjoy your summer. We'll see you with the summer break episode. And until next time, my name's been Rodney. My name's been Zach. Talk to you next time. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.